Week 14 Bioethics. The previous chapters constitute what we call general ethics, wherein basic principles and theories of morality are presented and studied. This chapter ventures beyond the theoretical and into practical, like examining cases and practices in specific fields, in this case bioethics, and see the applications of such principles and theories. Overview of bioethics. In the world characterized by great scientific and technological progress, the view on human self is also scientific. The human being has gradually lost his or her value as a unique creature. Today, most human problems can be addressed by science. What is the left with the human beings that cannot be dealt with science? Shall we say nothing? It seems that many people submit to the objectivity of science and forget its limitation in knowing the truth. Hence, this discipline is designed to enable teachers to teach the students the limitations of scientific objectivity. More than that, this discipline also reminds the students that the ethical principles cannot be taken away from every scientific discovery. The different cases provided in this part will help the student evaluate the risk and beneficial impact associated by every scientific and technological advance. The more informed students are, the more they can decide responsibly. Though it may be a hasty generalization, the incorporation of bioethics in the academic curriculum makes the Filipino citizens gradually aware of the various issues brought by scientific progress. This awareness is the onset of a more responsible citizen. Responsibility in this context is determined by the citizens' wise choice of leaders who will present every Filipino in the arena of policy making. Moreover, the various issues presented in this chapter may also develop the students' skills to weigh things in many perspectives. It is expected that every student has its own point of view in every presented issue. Engaging in the debate with a diverse opinion trains the student to argue and participate in public discussion. This is an early training for a responsible democratic society. Exploring this discipline gives students the chance to develop their ethical reasoning skills so that they can critically analyze problems in a more careful and reflective way. Bioethics. Bioethics is the study of ethical, social, and legal issues that arise in biomedicine and biomedical research. History of bioethics. Bioethics is a young discipline. It was introduced by Van Potter in the early 70s. According to him, the scope of bioethics biological knowledge, the science of living systems, and the knowledge of human value system. The purpose of this young disciplines is to bridge between scientific fact and ethical value in the world that is characterized by development accompanied with destruction and annihilation. In 1970, Van Rensselaer Potter was the first to use the term bioethics in a publication to advocate the development of a new discipline to address the basic problems of human flourishing. This article analyzes Potter's notion of bioethics in order to understand its origins, sources, and substance. Ancient. The ancient of the bioethics. The subject matter of bioethics can be traced back to the ancient times. The father of medicine, Hippocrates, contributed a lot in this area. Accordingly, in Giuramento, Hippocrates outlined the principle that would be guide in the medical practitioners in the practice of their profession. These principles are the following. Number 1. Abortion could not be permitted. Number 2. Euthanasia was to be avoided. Number 3. Professional secrets have to be maintained. Number 4. Decorum and honesty dictated life. And the last one, number 5. The patient could not be harmed, rather than patient's well-being a goal to be looked for. These principles are promised by some medical practitioners in present time. I made mention of some medical practitioners in order to emphasize that in our time, some countries are legalizing abortion and euthanasia, thus jeopardize some of the Hippocratic oath. The oldest sub-discipline of bioethics is medical ethics, which can be traced back to the introduction of the Hippocratic Oath, 500 BCE. Of course, medical ethics is not limited to the Hippocratic Oath. rather than marks the beginning of Western ethical reasoning and decision-making in medicine. Next is the medieval of bioethics. The Middle Ages was metaphysical by nature due to its theocentric orientation. However, there were traces of bioethical discussions in the works of Saint Thomas, which showed the occurrence of these disciplines subject matter in this period. In Summa Theologica, Saint Thomas dealt with issues relating to homicide, suicide, the pain of death, and mutilation, as the prominent and expert of the natural law theory. All the issues mentioned above were discussed with the emphasis of the natural law. Next is the modern. In 17th century, there was an emergence of the two strands of bioethics, the medical deontology and the teleological interpretation. The former is supported by Kant's philosophical view, which emphasizes the elaboration of the duties of the doctor towards the patient. The, the latter, which is grounded on Bentham's utilitarian perspective, emphasizes the absolute autonomy of the patient on choosing and deciding the medical treatment for himself or herself. The advantage of the many is the good, which determines the social acceptance. These two trends these two trends are present and influential in contemporary bioethics. Modern bioethics is based on a pluralistic and multidisciplinary approach, deriving its sources from medicine, biology, philosophy, law, theology, social and behavioral sciences, and history. Next is the postmodern. This era is characterized by a highly progressive period in the realm of bioethics. Nevertheless, together with the conspicuous development in the question on the capability of man to handle such progress. In addition, discussion on justice, freedom, and societal order paved the way for the rising knowledge of human rights, which is rooted man's dignity. To understand more of the contemporary period, the four factors influenced the rise of bioethics in the second half of the 20th century must be understood thoroughly.
So my name is Bernard C. Lareta and ako i-discuss karon ka week 14. It's all about ambivalence of biomedical progress, human rights, crisis regarding the might of ethical naturality of science, environmental crisis. Ang ambivalence of biomedical process. The past 2 decades prior to the emergency of biotechs were marked by a tumultuous progress in biomedical science. Human being desire for development and discovery have led them to tremendous achievements in the area of economy, politics, science, and technology. However, this grandeur success brought human being into a catastrophic situation because of their incapability handling the potential of their discoveries instead of using his invitation for the benefit of the people and turn out differently. Historically speaking, there are 3 possible ways at least to address the history of bioethics. At first, by the origin of the notion of bioethics. Second, by the origin of the academic discipline and the institutionalization of bioethics, and third by The origin of bioethics as a phenomenon, the modern era of healthcare ethics is often traced to Henry Beecher's influential 1966 article on ethical problems and clinical research, with particular attention to the failure to the informed patient of the risk involved in experimental treatment. Human rights, incorporating human dignity and the philosophical treatises highlighted the discussion on human rights. The right includes right to healthcare as injustice, but this justice was often neglected when society faced crisis and governance. Human rights include the rights to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, the right to work and education, and many more. Everyone is entitled to this right without discrimination. Crisis regarding the might of ethical neutrality of science. The positive approach by science retains a mentality which says there no need of a general ethics which will be disturb the perfect impartiality and objectivity of fact. In scientific research, neutrality of science in technology with respect to antecedent values. A simple interpretation of the claim that science is neutral is that science is value free. Value free. Science is impartial search for truth without regard for the interests of those affected. Environmental crisis. From the 60s, philosophies, scientists, entrepreneurs, politicians, and public opinions have had to consider the vast damage to the environment, water, air, the extinction of many species, and the breaking of the relationship of thousands of creatures with their natural habitat because of human activity. Before, our environment was so very clean, temperature was not like now. Many changed when many years passed by. Technologies are so many invented that not also good for our environment. So karon maoro na ako ang report. So thank you.
Are the rights of an individual to self-determine and the respect for their ability to make informed decisions about personal matters in freedom. Autonomy is one of the bioethical principles. Autonomy means having the capacity to self-govern, which is ability to act independently, responsibly, and with conviction. This concept of autonomy relies on the agency of a moral being to exercise his/her own decisions about his/her being. In the examples given, the first example shows a concrete observance of the principle because of the patient had a freedom to decide for what's best for him and the doctors or institution respected his decisions. Whereas in the second example, it shows a clear manipulation of the principle, Mr. Alde has no clear information about the cause and effect of the surgery and even the procedure itself. Second principle is anchored in the principle of autonomy. Veracity means to tell the truth or that never lie to patients or give them knowing false reassurance, which is also lying. For example, if a patient was starting chemotherapy and asked about the side effects, a nurse practicing veracity would be honest about the side effects they could expect with chemotherapy. It is an anchored in the principle of autonomy, because for the case of Mr. Alden in the second example, it doesn't have a clear agreement for the both parties because it was manipulated by the organ broker, and the effects of the lies was then seen after the surface. Therefore, the principle of veracity is clearly void.
Beneficence or the non-maleficence. These ideas are fundamental in the field of medicine. The foundation of medical practice is based on these ideas. Because of this, medical organizations prioritize promoting and saving life over all of the factors. The principle of beneficence, on the other hand, contends that each action must result in some positive or advantageous outcome for the actor. Non-maleficence, on the other hand, is on the opposing side. It encourages patients or client treatment in negative way to be avoided if not completely eliminated. This idea is comparable to the Buddhist or the do no harm. When the medication unpleasant and serious side effects cannot always be avoided. The Hippocratic Oath, which is still upheld and sworn to by doctors today, highlights these two values. The oath's positive definition is beneficence, while its negative definition is non-maleficence, a key component of a trust that the patient places in the healthcare professional is confidentially. A significant barrier will emerge between the patient and the practitioner if the patient believes the information regarding his or her ailment is open to public discussion. Even the hospital credibility would be called into question. For instance, despite the act that the law mandates the healthcare system inform the patient, minors with sexually transmitted disease will suffer untreated. Role fidelity. To date, purpose and vision are used both public and private entities to operate in definition, direction, the adherence to rule derived from the institution, mission, and vision determines the confidence of reaching its goals. To maintain one's action in the line with the institution direction, each member or employee should be provided the proper job description. In addition to the guiding principle, role fidelity is the faith adherence to the job requirement of the roles established for a specific profession. Role fidelity is simply described as a carrying out the assigned work in full conformance with the established scope of practice as provided by medical institution in the context of bioethics, more especially biomedical practices. For example, Darren is 24 years old nurse practitioner who works in the evening shift. One of her patients, a man almost at the same age named Albert, is in the hospital for almost a month. She knows Albert because they were coming from the same high school. She kept on visiting him during her vacant and talked to him about high school days. Darren feels that Albert is feeling some affection toward her, but she keeps their relationship friendly and professional. On his last day in the hospital, she hugs and says good luck to him. This simple scenario caught the attention of the hospital director. Darren's attention was called and reminded her not to engage a deeper communication to any patient because she might overlap the scope of the practices. There was no clear violation of principal rule fidelity. The action of the nurse must be corrected because it might give wrong impression to other clients or patients. This principle is applicable in every workplace and profession. Maintaining professionalism in the workplace is easy to do when everyone functions according to the given job description. But sometimes, part of being Filipino is to take part others' life, most especially if we feel that other Filipinos need our help. Others are authentic in their intention to help, while others are simply gathering personal information for fun. Whatever is our intention, we must always be objective in our action. If we are not asked to help, it is better to hold back because we might contribute to the dilemma. If other people or other Filipino is involved in an issue which is detrimental to the other institution or in danger and affects the work of our friend or other Filipino or ang kasamahan, it is then our institution, whatever happens to him or her in the line with her work, it will affect me and the entire force. Our action must also objective. We must first talk to the concern of other people, and if there is need to inform, to make it formal, gossiping, backfighting, and other forms of irrational moves would neither help the concerned person nor institution. Justice. The discussion on justice has been a hot topic in the realm of academic discourses. Many thinkers attempted to expound the meaning of justice. Most of us conceive justice as a retribute. It means that justice is observed when justice is served. However, not only retribute but also distributive. The latter form of justice is referring to how goods and services, power and wealth, burden and accountability are shared. Distributive justice is concerned with the fair and proper distributions of public benefits and burden among members of community. This has been an issue that thinkers from the past up to the present time are trying to contemplate and elaborate to acquire a distinctive description of justice to understand more about distributive justice. Let us try to study the historical development such concept. In the ancient times, justice was viewed according to merit. Plato in the Public clearly described justice according to the role played by every citizen in the society. The merit has been given the individual according to the individual shared to the society. Further, another form of justice, which is determined by utility, is promoted by consequentialists. The famous proponents in the view were Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. The former suggests that an action is good if the procedure happiness to the greatest number of people. Later, Bentham's successor carefully developed the doctrine into an ethical way. The formulation of doctrine is an act according to the role, so such action may produce good for the greatest number of people. This concept of justice is limited only to the majority or the minority, which is the victim of injustices.